So this discussion is now moving to the actual Xin project. We've heard some really wonderful talks about people's individual science projects, and I guess we want to see where Xin can actually add value to what we heard today. And just to get, so what I'm going to do is I'm not going to talk very much more myself. I'm going to let people first on the panel, who are the speakers, give their ideas about how Xin can make their lives easier and how Xin can go beyond what they're doing now. But I'll just to get the discussion going, I'll just sort of talk about what I think Xin really is. I mean, one way to look at it is as a pipeline or an accelerator, if you like, that goes from science to the real world in a different way than the standard university environment would. And this is sort of the R&D pipeline, where you have sort of the research end, which is characterized, by largely by university science, and then moving through to essentially some of what I would call sort of the science of basic engineering, and then concept development, prototyping, and then eventually might even go into clinical testing, process automation, and so on, and eventually to commercial handover. So that's one vision of Xin. Another vision of Xin is sort of as a matrix for converting the best science into solutions for interdisciplinary problems. And so here I've listed the various disciplines that we've heard from today, and basically along the horizontal axis and along the vertical axis are the things that we really care about. There's information technology, which we're hooked on and keeps needing more help because we're so hooked on it. There's healthcare and planet care, and sort of most of what we do sits somewhere on this matrix. And I would say Xin is sort of a way to really use this matrix. Now, these are two sort of structural visions of Xin, but the real question is, given all the talent that we have at Tsinghua and at Tao, what is really worth doing? And what's worth doing is obviously responding to grand challenges. And this grand challenge concept is, of course, a sort of a science management concept that's been around for a long time. I think I've heard that word the first time about 20 years ago. It's been a bit overused, but I think it still is useful to think about a new center such as this, because certainly there's no point in building a new center without planning to do something new with it. Otherwise, we can just keep doing the wonderful science we're doing today. So we'd like to look for suitable challenge which will differentiate the new center and really solve problems that we have outside the walls of the universities. And so how do we look for and recognize these kinds of challenges? This is sort of a process question that I have for the panel. The process question also I have for the audiences is how will Xin, if it really raises its $500 million or $1 billion or so endowment, how will it decide what's worth doing with that resource? And how do we sort of find these challenges? And the second thing I'm looking for from, again, the panel and the audience is some examples of such grand challenges. And you will not be allowed just to simply say, well, I'd like to expand my own research, because we've already heard about that. So I think I'll just start, I guess, with the panelists here and see, and just go along the row. I'd start with Professor Huang at the end, since he's sitting at the end. And get some thoughts in response to these questions.
Can you pass the microphone?
So I'll pass you the microphone. I'm not sure it was much useful to me. So how do you know something is a big enough challenge? And you have some challenges of your own that you could offer.
Now that's a great challenge.
Yeah, I think today's I heard a lot of new idea from the presentation this afternoon. So what is the grand challenge? So 1 year ago, when we discussed how to build up the Xin Center, I think it's they're very, very difficult. There are two problems. How to find a grand challenge project, how to find crazy people. So it's really a grand challenge for us. I don't know. Actually, I don't know the answer. Yeah, please. I think we all of us talk a lot this afternoon. Maybe it's your chance.
Can I ask you guys a question? So, and then I'll talk about two consider the grand challenge, but it comes from a different direction. Usually, what did you consider to be the grand challenge in music? Very exciting. There's so much What was it, any one of you? What was a grand challenge in what you did? What was your challenge? Because sometimes it looks like a challenge could be to develop some method for measuring something or producing something. But what was the grand challenge is usually, there's another type of grand challenge, which to make something available to the outside world based on what you're doing. So that has a different set of goals versus some of the goals that I saw here. So I think we need to qualify some of that. And then maybe I'll talk about two cases. I'm answering a question with a question. Yeah, I like to see what's in your mind.
Scoring mechanism for grand challenges.
Yeah.
And some of the criteria that we've raised and we have in mind are things like impact on society, impact on human health, impact on environment and planet. It doesn't have to be all that, but we need well-defined criteria.
So I'll give you two examples. I heard something about zero gravity here. Somebody mentioned something like zero friction. Okay, I'll talk about zero gravity. So I heard about this issue of zero gravity. How do you get to it? You know, NASA was always trying to get people out there, but it was NASA. So they never really produced what we needed. They gave us a shuttle. It got up there, and there was no place to do the work because they had a big empty cargo bay. So some guys and I sat and talked about it, and we said, you know, we have to put the laboratories up there, instrumented, so that we could do the work and get something done with what otherwise is just a big show for a week or two up in space. Okay? So our grand challenge was, how do we get a vehicle which we can't build, instrumented, and go do good science in microgravity in that environment? Okay? So that was a challenge, but it turned out, I thought the challenge would be very technical. It turned out to be totally political. You know, getting it allowed and getting it up there in the face of things that are challenges like, wow, you know, you guys are going to go do it. Everyone who wants to feed on that system is going to stop you. So it has to do with, again, the market and what you're up against, competition. In that particular case, we did it. You may not have heard of it because we had to be quiet. A company called Space Hab. We did 18 missions of the shuttle. We built laboratories, single, double, triples. They were a small tunnel into the front. Once they were in orbit, the astronauts went in and they did all their experiments, and lots of neat things happened. So, but once again, we didn't get repeatability, because every time you do something, it's when something already happens. You know, they said, well, let's do robotics. Well, we don't need this. But if it's all thought out, you know what the result's going to be. It's when something happens that you didn't expect. Aha, now let's do it again and again, figure out what we learned. So we didn't have enough of that. But okay, so there is a grand challenge. I thought it was. Wow, the challenge was actually get it built, get allowed to do it, and we flew 18 missions. Okay, so there was a crazy. That was crazy. I'm thinking of two things people thought I was crazy. No, why did you want me to go? So the other crazy thing was somebody came to me and said, "You're a laser guy, right?" Well, see, I'm the only one here. This is after IBM suggested these barcodes. Okay, so they said to me, "Shelley, could you tell us whether lasers can really scan them and read them, because IBM's not going to do it. They claim they just give us the barcode. Why are you so generous?" Well, if you use this, that's more data, then we'll sell you more computers. That's why. Okay, good citizen. So I was crazy, and another fellow and I decided to go in and make the scanners. Wow. You know, I look back and I think I was a little crazy, and I was on a program that said crazy, because one, there were no way to print the barcodes. Particularly, it's not just using an inkjet thing. You've got to print it on every type of printing, which means a film image of something that has metrics on it, you know, in terms of the widths of those bars and spaces, and bilaterally tolerance, which the industry didn't know about. sharper for the eye is better than fatter, but too sharp or too fat is out of tolerance. So right away you're sitting with a grand challenge that gets bigger and bigger. You have to learn how to print the stuff. So the medium. Now you get the medium done. Now you have to figure out what's available to make scanners. Well, there's hardly any digital. There's hardly, all of these different things are missing. So I'm just trying to understand. I know two things that I got motivated to do, but I'm trying to understand, do we look at the end use in terms of what we like to do for society, and then anything that goes in is part of the grand challenge?
Don't you define grand challenge?
Excuse me.
Technology challenges and enterprises challenges? I mean, we are not the right people to discuss this. I mean, in our view, grand challenges is developing something that eventually will turn into technology and eventually into a grand enterprise. But we, well, at least I speak for myself, I mean, we are preparing the tools and the conception, not the challenge of making the technology come true.
Can I just say, sort of, Shelley gave two interesting examples here, which I think is, they're very different. One of them, the barcode, is problem-driven, which is what to do with the barcode. It was clear you could do something with it. The second thing with the space shuttle was capability-driven. Have this capability, they didn't know what to do with it. So we can have both kinds, but the capability we have here is Zheng, which is a new vehicle for doing. It's like the space shuttle, only it's populated with talent rather than with space, vacuum. And so I think we really want to think about what can we now do with all this capability? What would you like to do, given all of the talent that you can now integrate in both universities? Think of it as a space shuttle with the empty cargo bay. Maybe some thoughts.
No, I cannot form any answer, but because I have a question I want to ask. I asked you before, what is Xin's final objective or your product? That's I don't know. In other words, is the product you listed here, or is the scientific discovery also included, or is the students, you talked about before? So what eventually Xin want to have, which Xin said, this is we probably have. Then if we understand that, maybe it's better for us to go back to define what is the challenge in terms of our outcome. So in other words, outcome.
Okay, maybe
do we have that?
Yeah, that will be a long story, but I want to shorten.
What is outcome?
Yeah, the problem in China so far, the research mostly that's progress research, not the breakthrough, because that's the evaluation system. The professors and research don't like. Okay, very difficult to try the breakthrough. And then also that's one barrier. The another barrier is somehow the interdisciplinary. The people working even through material and mechanics should be so close but separated. And also another challenge is the students. Yeah, because this environment, students trained also not that is very little, very less challenge. So that's the environment. So we want to, at the very beginning, we want to have a creative environment. Particularly, we can learn from Israel to try to make such a big change. To have some example successful in China, in Tsinghua. So that's the history. But now, that's the goal. But we want to have somehow. Yeah.
Cannot hear.
Cannot hear. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, that's a challenge for me.
Yeah, that's a challenge.
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge for me. I will try to speak loudly. Okay. Now that's the goal. Then I want to use the example, the grand challenge, the working together, stimulating the university to change the policy, change the environment to encourage the faculty and the student working for hard problem. Try to make breakthrough.
That's
Yeah, that's the somehow.
I don't know. That's if you want something more than transformative, it's not incremental, transformative. Your Xin definition is want to more than transformative. It's even that level because that's what we call something really crazy. Then your goal is something transformative. Then you build team, you build environment, work on that. That is your goal. But if you want to change the system, change the culture, or change Tsinghua's environment, you build a total different approach. These two are contradictory.
Oh, that's why we need to build up the center.
No, I'm very.
That's we build.
I'm in the U.S. for 28 years.
Yeah.
What I say. Okay.
Yeah, of course.
That's it. Because you're contradictory. If you want to do that, I agree. Okay. That we should do. But then you don't set up your such big, more than transformative. That go. That's tough. But if happening, have two together, that'd be great. But that's.
Yeah, but I'll give you an example. Okay, just a quickie. So we have, in a particular, in New York City, we had a challenge from the mayor to set up a new campus. Okay.
You
And-
get it.
Okay, so it turned out that Technion went with Cornell, but at NYU we took a different approach. We were going to build something. We were going to suggest something that even if we didn't win, we'd do it anyway. That was our agreement. We came up with the notion of cities. That's where half the world lives, and in 20 years, 80% or 75% will be in cities. So we came up with the notion of studying the Center for Urban Sciences. What does that mean? First, we figured the informatics and the databases. So we signed an agreement with the city to have all the data flowing from the healthcare, from transportation, from you name it, all the different elements of the city. And that became the living laboratory for our school, for our program, the center. Now, in effect, what we were doing is defining the problems in the living laboratory of the city, and then we were congregating to talk about which are the ones we want to pick that will be grand challenges for us. It relate to energy, it may relate to pollution, environment, it may relate to all kinds of things. And then we looked across the whole place and said, who has things they want to offer, ideas to solve some of those, okay? And we're in that process. In addition, we made an effort as part of that. We said, how do we get it all coordinated? And then some people will want to actually do the research. Some will want to focus on what's the need in the society and how do I build products or services using this technology. So we're in the process of differentiating it. We went around to all the different parts of the university and said, okay, where are you doing things in entrepreneurism? Okay, the business school said, well, we are, but we looked at it, but you're not doing startups, you're teaching bigger companies how to manage. So we ended up setting up an entrepreneurism effort to just excite people with people coming back, alumni, and saying, look at the companies that I started, this is what it took, and I'm glad to be a mentor. If you have an idea, we'll sit in, because we've been involved, and we'll tell you what we think is involved. Then you can go back and look at all the different technologies and make some decisions. Oh, you need some money. We have a little venture fund, okay? And we had competitions every 6 months. People come up from 100 projects to 10 to 5 that get funded, and then we all look at them 6 months later. So it's a learning process for the campus, okay? And it's taking them an environment that allows them to think in that way.
Just made a comment on that. I mean, this is great. I mean, when you see brand challenge the word, you don't know actually what it is. I mean, brand, what is this brand? But actually, when you hear this example, this is exactly basically crystallize what I can foresee. Something that forward-looking, something that has major implication in society, something that is out of the box. And basically, that's what it is. There's one key element that's missing, which I'm going to pose as a challenge to this group, which is why Israel? Why China? Why Tel Aviv? Right? I mean, you could answer all these questions by NYU and NYU alone. Why do you have to do this? So you have to take that into consideration because we're forming this alliance and collaboration. What does Tel Aviv has to offer that Tsinghua doesn't have? What does Tsinghua has to offer that Tel Aviv doesn't have? Why do you have to cross the ocean or cross the continent for these two, very distant universities? Very, very expensive. Why do you want to do this? And how are you going to do this take advantage of what, I'm not asking you, I'm asking the whole thing, right? I mean, this is, you know, I'm adding another layer of complexity.
I would like to make 2 comments and 1 answer. One comment is that we should, if we want to encourage crazy ideas, we should change the paradigm in the academic, at least locally, environment, that a grand failure is better than a mediocre success. And I know one example only in the University of Chicago where a person was granted tenureship for a grand failure. But his name is Walter. He still is, outstanding experimentalist. But that's the only example that I know. Usually for grand failures, you pay, and you don't get tenureship. So that's one thing to consider. The other thing, I guess you mentioned his problem-driven and capability-driven, and you have already mentioned one solution to increase the collision rate between the capabilities and the problems by some brainstorming of people who know that and meet together and bring up crazy ideas. And so that's another point I wanted to make. The third point is half an answer to what you have asked. Not necessarily Tsinghua and Tel Aviv, but just the fact that 2 different cultures meet and interact, bring diversity. That's how the biology also is. Diversity and in a way capability to overcome problems, because each local institution has its own culture, has its own paradigms of how to do and want to do, and what's good and what's bad, and areas in which you are expert, areas with which you are not. So not necessarily Tsinghua and Tel Aviv, just the mere encounter of 2 good institutions, the added value of interaction, I think is very significant.
Maybe I can play devil's advocate. So 2 institutions, so why not NYU? You know, Tsinghua, NYU.
That's another possibility.
Why? So, I mean, since you're doing it, so you need to justify why we have to do this in this way. And then let me put in another layer of complexity. If you just say bring 2 different kinds of people together and brainstorm, that's not going to work. I think that there's a fundamental paradigm shift in terms of way the business model. That is, you have to do things fundamentally different from vast majority of other things in order to have something grand to happen. Otherwise, it won't happen. I mean, it will happen by itself anyway already. You know, at Tel Aviv, it can happen. If you have to look for something that is otherwise cannot be done, it has to be this way.
Yeah, we have to have a USP-FTV selling proposition for this combination.
Right.
But I think, how much time do we still have now? Because this is
This is good stuff.
interesting. Yeah, so we're in 8 minutes.
Chinese way. Actually, it's 8 minutes and 30 seconds.
In 8 minutes, we probably won't resolve the
We're not going to
answers.
resolve,
But I
lay
think we
out
can
the
talk
problems
about
that
the
you-
process. We should talk about the process that we will, you will be taking on this journey of Xin. And so I think you have to accept now that Xin is a boundary condition that exists. It's like his, space shuttle back, this empty loading bay in these space shuttles existed. Somebody put it there for various military reasons, as we heard a few nights ago, and it was useless. And then basically you filled that vacuum. So you imagine now we're going to try to fill this vacuum, this Xin vacuum, with stuff. And what stuff would you like it to be? I mean, it's a great situation to be in. It's undeveloped space, and I guess what we'd like is sort of some input from you on the process that the management of the center, which is Yale and Quanshui, will actually follow to sift what is really worth doing, what will really be unique, and really solve problems. So I'd like some input, because at the end you are going to be executing on this process. You'll be filling space. So maybe
Can I just throw one more thing?
Yeah.
First of all, when you ask the question why, you've begun. You broke the inertia. So we as a group have broken the inertia of the why. You can sit and say why forever. Now, that very fact means you're searching to do something different and new. That's why it's called Xin. Okay? You want to change something. Can we change every aspect of the system? No. But we can start. And it's all about starting. So we've begun, and I think, I feel very proud to sit here with everybody I've met. Everybody I met, is enthused, willing to work together, challenging as you are, which we should. So part of this whole thing is what we evolve is the process, because we will ask these questions. We have to tell ourselves, continue to ask, and let's go get something done. And as we've done it, we'll define what it means. It's always easy to go the other way. It depends on your attitude in life. If it's positive, you say, let's move, and we'll adjust and learn. Otherwise, you just sit like this all the time, and you do nothing. So I think, okay, go ahead.
Jimmy. A quick comment. I like, Shelley, I like your...
No, it's okay. I'm holding it.
Okay. I like your positive attitude. I learned a lot from you just the past 2 days. Now, there's another aspect of this. I think Professor Wei Sun's question is a valid question, right? So your attitude is, let's embrace failure. Let's take a look, jump in, and see what happens. There's also another aspect, which is what makes things tip. Turning from just an experiment to a widespread practice. So that's another thing that's interesting. If I look at, for example, the current Chinese economy, I would claim that without Shenzhen, there's no current day China. What was Shenzhen? It was an experiment. They created a small-scale environment which was drastically different from the rest of China. Could that be a model for Xin? Maybe. Could Xin succeed? Maybe. Could Xin fail? Maybe. But if you don't do it, this goes back to Shelley. You never know.
Let's hear from the guys the gals.
Gabriel hasn't said anything.
To be honest, I don't know an answer. But again, I think I'm also suggest to take. I'm for this positive attitude. If we do not try, we will never know where we can go. So, this is a process. We cannot at the beginning. At the beginning, we do not know answer. We will learn this on the way.
But we still have to pick up our battle, right? There are so many different fronts. Right? We have to start somewhere, but where we start, we still need to think about, okay, we can focus on something. There's too many different front challenges, right? What, we can be most likely successful. That's a question. If I pick something.
There are historic examples here. Actually, MIT,
Changing students.
yeah, MIT and Harvard, 50 years ago didn't talk to each other, and about 40 years ago they formed this Health Sciences and Technology program, which was joint MD PhD program, which has succeeded beyond all hopes. People like Langer are basically built on that, which was so. The concept that an engineering school at that time, without a medical school, could work with Harvard of all places, which happened to be a medical school, and create essentially the East Coast, this East Coast Silicon Valley in biomedicine. That's what happened. Because of that, because people were willing to fill that empty space between two institutions. Nowadays, of course, the shrinking of distance doesn't mean that you have to be at opposite ends of Massachusetts Avenue. You could be in Beijing and Tel Aviv. So that's the kind of thing you want to see in 50 years. One way to think about this is where do you want to be 50 years from now? What do you want to have created? So that's a friction-free universe. I don't know. That's impossible.
Part of that depends on what the grand challenge is that we choose to, or what kind of processes.
I think we should identify those, George.
Okay, so many grand challenges. We have problem how to make people living longer. This has been always a long challenge. And challenge including how to cure the cancer completely. This has never been solved. And also things like how to travel fast and light. These are also grand challenge. So, but look at our audio and our capacity is our as well as our problem. We actually can combine different strengths together. So we have people from electronic department, we have people from nanomaterial, people from life science, and many also biomedical chemicals. And this could be merged into one thing. I think in the next 30 years, the biggest thing coming out will be a machine that is half man and half woman. Machine is half man and half artificial intelligence. So combination of electronic and life science. Actually, it has already happened. So look at the development in synthetic biology. In the next few years, the life will be dramatically engineered to make it more perfect. And now people are not only to work with microorganisms, bacteria, and probably yeast, but now we can synthesize yeast genome. We can artificially synthesize and edit the yeast genome, and probably in the next few years to come, we are able to edit mammalian cells in the genome, and then we can improve life by our design. And we can incorporate technology from electronics, from engineering, rather than from biological side. And this could be one of the grand challenges, combining strengths of different things. Maybe Tel Aviv and Tsinghua University.
You could hijack evolution.
So I'll give you an example.
I apologize, but I think we really need to head towards the ceremony, because otherwise we'll be left outside.
I throw one thing out.
Sure.
I spoke to a guy who funds a lot of stuff, and I won't mention the name. It's a huge foundation, like billions. And he said, I have all these scientists that are working on this disease. That. He says the big issue here is 300 years will we even be here? It's sustainability. So I said, break it down. He said, okay, first it's sustainability environment, sustainability in the humans in terms of healthcare, really providing healthcare and cure. Those two things, he said, that's what I should be funding, not each little element down there. Think about it. Maybe sustainability, what it's all about. Sustainability of our planet and us.
This planet will care.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.